So, ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker for today is Datuk Zuraidah Atan, Chairman, Student Volunteers Foundation, Malaysia. So allow me to read her biodata a little bit. So Datuk Zuraidah Atan is a practicing advocate and solicitor lawyer in her own firm, Chambers of Zuraidah Atan. So Datuk Zuraidah holds an LLB degree from the University of Buckingham, England, and obtained the Malaysian Qualifying Board Certificate in Legal Practice in 1992. So Datuk Zuraidah has more than 25 years of experience and currently sits on the boards of SP Setia Berhad, Petro Malaysia, and Kenanga Islamic Investor Berhad. So ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to call upon Datuk Zuraidah Atan, Chairman, Student Volunteers Foundation, Malaysia, to deliver her keynote entitled Volunteerism is a Key Pillar for Nation Building.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, young man. I guess, you know, when you look at someone like that, you know that he's slightly younger than I am. Yes, may I, wish everyone good morning. And as a keynote speaker early this morning, so one has to ensure that it is a very light session. Yeah. Ohayo gozaimasu. Hajime mashite. Dozo yoroshiku. Daijoubu desu ka? Professor Dato Dr. Asma, Vice Chancellor of University Science Malaysia, as well as the Presidente of APUSEN, and of course, husband, distinguished Professor Dr. Ahmad, and of course, Dr. Eileen, and Vice President, Sensei, and of course, all APUSEN members. I am representing Yayasan Sukarelawan Siswa, that Students Volunteers Foundation, which is 100% owned by our Ministry of Higher Education. It was set up in 2012, yes? So basically, as a wholly owned entity, we work with all institutions. We work with all higher education institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just, let you know, when I was asked to actually, Dr. Eileen was correct, actually when there was a message from Professor Adnan, who has, Dato Adnan, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, and he says, Dato Asma wants you to speak. And I said, yes, of course, because, she's my senior in boarding school. Now, when you have your senior asking you to do something, you don't say no. She was a brilliant lady in boarding school, and this is, we consider our boarding school as the best in the country, It's called Tunku Kusha College. Yeah, I know there's one more TKC, a couple of TKC ladies here as well. Yes, there you are. And in boarding school, she would have been, she was, very smart, dynamic, and so on. Whereas, c'est moi, not so much. So for me, I would have been voted, and I was voted most highly unlikely to succeed. Whereas Prof turns out to be this genius scientist and so on. Now, let me share with you as I'm talking, because you're all from institutions of higher learning. Now, the important bit is what happens when you do community engagement. Now, volunteerism is always, to us, is a key pillar in nation building. So whatever you do, community engagement is all part of nation building. And I think that's important, yeah? Right, what I'll do is I'll run through very, very quickly. It's primarily share with you, talk through with you, walk through with you the role of higher learning institutions from the perspective of community engagement, students' community engagement, university community engagement. And of course, talking about youth engagement with the community, talking about women issues, women moving millions, And I'm so pleased that it's one of the sub-themes for your, for your summit, for our summit. And of course, when I will be talking through with you volunteerism per se, and what we at YSS, we call it YSS, Yayasan Sukarelawan Siswa, what we do. So, I will walk through and show you what we've been doing since 2012, and then you will understand what are our values. Right. Yes. We have this concept. Whilst we talk about the university community engagement, to us, it means town and gown concept. In UK, if you've been studying in UK, you know it's a town and gown. Particularly, it means your gown, which is your robes, your university, and you need to actually work with the community. So in the United Kingdom, or at least that's when I was brought up, that's how we do it. It is actually the town and gown concept. So we would have friends of the university. So the people in the community will be invited for events, for public lectures and so on. And the students will actually interact via the university to the community. So the Lord Mayor of Buckingham would actually come around often enough or invite some of us. We were student leaders at that time, and then to interact. So that's how you build up rapport. Until today, we're very close with some of the community, some of the people living in UK. Now, similarly, we try to apply the same concept in Malaysia. And I'm so pleased that, our government has also set up, entities like the UCTC, which is University Community Transformation Centers. Now, what does it do? One of the things that it's supposed to do is actually ensure that institutions of higher learning actually becomes catalysts for development of those areas. That is why you have all your universities, all our universities are in places in such far-flung areas. Sinto in UUM, or rather UUM in Sinto and such places. The whole idea was to develop the areas that is part. If you've been involved with the central planning agencies and so on, it's all part of this game plan to ensure development in some of these locations. Ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about universities, what do you think? You talk about the role of higher learning institutions. Basically, you are the providers, the drivers of knowledge, information, and ideas. Then you want, the world at large will want you, the drivers of ideas and knowledge, to actually apply that to the communities that you operate. It's a global community. And that is what it's all about. And I think that ties in very well with the, the objectives, the vision, the aspirations of APUSEN. For us, at least for me, I'm more interested in looking at the role of higher institutions, of higher education learning institutions, in the context of governance, in the context of accountability, in the context of sustainability and impact assessment. Professores, lecturers, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, when you have community engagement, when you do projects, when you encourage your students, your staff to do all these wonderful community engagement, community projects, please bear in mind your role. Your role as an institution, your role is to ensure governance are in place. Why I say that? Because I've been involved in the private sector, in government, in the quasi-government, in agencies, and trust me, somewhere along the line, with noble hearts, with good intentions, we always fail in our governance. We fail in the way we operate. We fail to be accountable. Who is accountable? We are. As the leaders of our institutions, we are accountable when our students and our staff do the project. What happens? Are there returns on investment? As a banker, by the way, I'm trained as a banker. I used to I was president and CEO of a merchant bank, investment bank, and I've always been in banking, and I do cross-border transactions. That's my forte. I do, I advise on, I advise state governments and federal governments. I advise companies to be listed on the London Stock Exchange or the, Bursa Malaysia. I was on the board of Bursa until recently. I retired. And then, of course, also on the boards of Papua New Guinea or whatever. So my point is that we all may be thinking of just purely projects, purely community engagement, making do good. Let's have this caring heart. But the central to this, the crux of it is you must make sure there is accountability, because you're using public funding, ladies and gentlemen. You're using corporate sponsors funding. So you need to ensure there is reporting. You need to ensure that there is periodic, there is accountability and resource allocation. And that's so important. You need to ensure to make sure that your projects are sustainable, that the work that you do is sustainable. Otherwise, then you're just a one-off. Feel good, do good, but that's it. Now, we have this problem when we see projects in impoverished areas, in far-flung areas. We need to see continuity. It's different if you are training, leadership training, if you're doing that sort of thing. Then that's different, because that's what we do at YSS. At YSS, Yayasan Sukarelawan Siswa, we're more into capacity building. We're not so much into the projects per se. Yeah? We're more into building volunteer leaders. But for members of APUSEN, for universities, we are all involved in projects, in community engagement. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we engage the community with a view, with the desire to improve the standards of living, to improve the virtues of doing good for communities, we must make sure there is continuity, there is sustainability, and of course, always measure impact assessment. We're all part of this global world. We're all involved in meeting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If you don't know them by now, you must know each and every one of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the students who participate in YSS missions, they are forced to learn these. So that whatever they do, whether it is a teaching, tuition mission, or a simple, improvement of communities, they need to measure the impact. They need to know before, during, and after. They must learn that not to make motherhood statements. They must learn to validate, verify, and evidence-based. Because all these motherhood statements are no good to anyone if it's just to show numbers that you've been there, seen that, done that. So we're very clear on the concept that to us, you need to measure the impact, the work that you do on the ground. Right, we're very much into experiential and service learning, and I think that goes for all of us. It's basically application of whatever the students are learning or have learned in campus. And this is applying it on the ground. And there is for us, one of the virtues that we strongly believe in is the right volunteers for the right job. We make sure that if you're a medical student, the fundamental thing is really to ensure that you practice, you do health screening and so on. If you're an engineer, you ought to be, applying whatever concepts. But that does not mean you do not do all the other things as well. Yeah? So experiential learning, service learning, that's vital to us. YSS, we are embedded in the blueprint, the National Higher Education Blueprint. So if you have a copy of the blueprint, we're in there. And that's 2015 to 2025. So trust me, we have to have the same aspirations, as government has, because we're part of the blueprint. Capacity building, we believe very strongly in capacity building in hard volunteer work. It's not just the typical, we have the saying, typical gotong royong, that means the simple get together. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to have that too. But for us at YSS, it's more into hard volunteer work, learning how to be a leader, a volunteer leader, learning the ropes, learning project management, time management, leadership skills, how to run teams, how to make sure you actually meet all the, all your vision, and you have to do report writing and so on and so forth. Now, YSS firmly believes that students must be ethically and morally upright. At YSS, we are training leaders. We are training volunteer leaders for, this our next generation. They must be spiritually grounded. They must be compassionate. They must be caring. They must appreciate sustainable development goals and, of course, lead healthy lifestyles. And because they will become role models. You know, when we take our students into the impoverished communities, they, the community look up to them. And they are the role model. So, number one, we are anti-smoking. We are anti-vape and so on. So, you need to lead a healthy lifestyle in order to lead others. We are supportive of the government's, later I'm sure His Excellency, our Honorable Minister, will be talking. I'm sure he will mention about the gap year. So I shan't preempt that. Yeah, so, but this is basically one of the initiatives by the ministry, not so much by us, yeah? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So feel free to make sure that you understand them and you apply and you ensure that your students and your staff as well apply these Sustainable Development Goals. And to meet them, the nation, country as a whole needs to meet them. And one of the important ones that I like is actually women, gender equality. And of course, for you men, thank you for pushing the gender equality agenda. And I'm so pleased, Dr. Eileen, for actually looking at this as one of the, for APUSEN looking at this as one of those sub-themes, women moving millions. And you know what they say? You teach a man, you're only teaching an individual. But you teach a woman, a girl, you're actually teaching a whole nation. Is that correct? Yeah? Yeah. Very muted applause by the men. Yeah. Right. Moving on, volunteerism. My favorite. I do have a day job, but typically I spend, if you're a corporate person, you ought to be spending 80% of your time and 20% into all these volunteer efforts. In my case, it's the other way around. I've been spending 80% of my life, of my time, doing all these volunteer activities, even, other than just running this as chairman of YSS, and only 20% of my corporate activities. Now, volunteerism is a key pillar in nation building. It is vital, it is pivotal. These are our YSS values. I need to share and walk through with you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, right volunteers for the right job. So we look at selection process for our volunteer leaders is very important to us. You're more than welcome to send your students to us for the training that they will get from us, because we will make sure right volunteers for the right job. We're very much into inclusiveness. At YSS, all the students of higher learning, whether you're from college community colleges, polytechnics, teachers training institutes, IPG, we call it here, or even from private universities and public universities. They are all together because there is this inclusiveness. They're selected from various backgrounds, various ethnicity, and so on. And they'll be grouped and be together part of this team for 2 weeks, solid, and they have to learn to be immersed with the community. That's an immersion where you eat, you live, you breathe with community. At the end of the whole process, they will know the community so much that they'll be experts by the time they leave. There is a process. Our module is very strict. Let me just walk through with you. First, the selection, and then they have to do a pre-departure training where we teach them the do's and don'ts of the area. If we send them to Laos PDR, We will get Laotians to teach them on the do's and don'ts of Laos. Laos, as you know, is communist country. We are not. Laos, as you know, is a Buddhist country. We are a Muslim country. So we need to make sure that when our students homestay together with the Laotian students, they understand the do's and don'ts. And that goes with Vietnam as well. We will have the do's and don'ts of Vietnam. Or even back home in Sabah and Sarawak. We've just come back from Sarawak in all the IBAN. We had about 100 students in 5 locations, from students from all over, some of whom are your students. And we make sure they learn the do's and don'ts of the IBAN community, of the Melanau community, and so on. So that's important to us, is you need to be equipped with the knowledge and training before you send your students out into the field. They must know what they have to expect. Having gone through, it's only a few days, during the mission itself, we make sure they follow through very strict SOPs. YSS prides in having very stringent standard operating procedures. They have to follow through, and they have to, we've got 6 clusters. We've got the ICT and social enterprise, social entrepreneurship. We are digital ambassador for MDAC, that's Malaysia Digital Economy. We help teach communities on e-Rezeki and e-Usahawanan. These are social enterprise products to upgrade the community. And we also help to teach ICT to bridge the digital divide between rural and urban areas. We are very much into education. Every one of our student volunteers must teach. That is important to us. They must learn pedagogy. They must learn the techniques of teaching, doing fun learning, teaching all these rural kids. Yes. And they must also do agriculture. They must be involved with with recycling. They must be involved in community engagement. And that's where the best part, they all love community engagement. They love to build roads. They love to learn how to cement courtyards. They love how to build bridges and so on. And trust me, they do that. Even if they are medical students, even if they are human, scientists and so on. They have to also be involved in health screening and medical activities. They also have to be involved in disaster and crisis management. In many of these areas, we have to make sure we work with third parties like fire brigades and so on to make sure to teach about prevention of fires and floods and disasters and so on. And we also produce, this is the vision, to produce global volunteer leaders, icon global volunteers. And of course, it is high impact programs. For us, ladies and gentlemen, it's all high impact and low cost, rapid execution. We are not funded by the government. We may be owned by the government. All our activities are not funded by the government. So it's all private sector funding. So, and of course, token sums from colleges like yourselves, from universities, for the participation. But the rest, we seek out funding. And when we do that, and that is why accountability, governance, sustainability, these are all very crucial to us to educate our volunteer leaders, to make sure that they understand these virtues. Yeah? Now, we have 5 thrusts, like in the hand. This is what volunteerism is all about, is the hand, the 5 fingers. Now, we inculcate leadership skills among student volunteers. There are 1.2 million students in the country, students of higher learning. We organize diversified, high-impact volunteer programs to make sure that the leaders come up through these programs. We fortify the ecosystem. This is what Apusen is trying to do as well, is you must fortify the ecosystem of volunteerism, the thinking of volunteerism, the heart, the soul. Yeah? And we encourage strategic networking like here we are today. So take these 2 days to actually network and enhance strategic linkages. At the end of the day, we must reinforce training, is volunteer leadership training. And that's what we do at YSS. Just a bit of background very quickly. We were set up in 2012. I was, you know, I was given the pleasure of being of heading it since 2012. And you know, that is the thing as well. Whenever a government or an institution you want to set up something, always remember you must set up with a view of sustainability. And if you don't think about that, you're literally, you know, entrusting key personnel to actually take it to the next level and look for funding for yourselves. And that's a bit hard sometimes, yeah? Right, anyway, our vision is, or the vision that was entrusted upon us is to develop Malaysia as a hub for student volunteerism. And to, you know, basically to produce icon volunteers, to produce global volunteer leaders. So it's a very interesting vision that was entrusted upon us because that was the position taken by the cabinet at that time. And of course, so our mission is basically to encourage, to inculcate, to do all sorts of things to ensure that that vision is being met. We have our objectives. There are 7 objectives. Only 3 are, to me personally, very important. One is, of course, strategic linkages, ensuring network and on the international stage. Number 2, build volunteer leaders. And, of course, to make sure Malaysia is a hub for student volunteerism. We've got a series of strategic alliances that we've been, since 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a member of, not just, we're an associate member of APUSEN, we are also a member of IAVE, that's International Association for Volunteer Efforts. If you're in the world of volunteerism, that's like the Olympics of volunteer effort organizations. So as a volunteer effort organization, we are a full-fledged member. In fact, I was a keynote speaker last year in Mexico. We are also, we are co-hosting with Yayasan Salam for the Asia Pacific Regional Youth and Volunteer Conference in November. I think in your goodie bags, you will have the brochure on IAVE, IAVE Asia Pacific, that's being held in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah, that's being held in November 22nd to 26th. So please do join. It is Asia Pacific. It's a regional thing. And you will be there with, you know, hundreds of others as well, of like-minded organizations. From 2012 to 2016, snapshot of all our activities in the region, because we are very much ASEAN-centric as well. You know, so we work closely with our Wisma Putra. That's our Foreign Affairs Ministry. We work closely with Ministry of Defense. We're a firm believer of National Blue Ocean Strategy. We utilize all their facilities and vice versa. Moving on, we've got, you know, and all the activities by the students. Let me tell you, we are student-led organization. We're very much student-centric. It's all done by our alumni. Alumni are students who have participated in our missions. They are automatically called alumni. Yes? And of course, some of them are here amongst the crowd. And of course, there you are. USM has got quite a number of them as well. And they've done fairly well. I see Amran, I see Zulafka and Azlinda. Yes. Now, this is our joint students volunteer mission in Vietnam. It's called the Mua Hisan. In Vietnam, every year, middle of July to middle of August, that's for 1 whole month. And we are the only foreign country invited to participate. So in all the foreign countries that we go to, it must be our students, the local students. We never do things on our own, entering into your country, just us. We don't believe that. We believe in community engagement. It must be together with the students locally. We're not Santa Claus. We're not humanitarian aid. We can't change the world. We don't go in there and tell you that we know better than you. No. Together, our students, your students, we do the engagement. And this teaser basically is what, as a snapshot of what we do every year in Vietnam. Next. These are our students. Vietnamese students wear uniform. Building a road. That's just a teaser. For Vietnam, this is Ho Chi Minh, by the way, in Phu Xuan. So every year we're there. It's about 4 to 5 weeks. Usually it's 4 weeks. Last year was 5. And we work closely. Our partner, our counterpart is the Ho Chi Minh Youth Union, or rather, actually, it's the Communist Youth Union. But so they will have the whole, all the universities that come under them. So our partners typically will be the Foreign Trade University, will be the Humanities University, and so on. But under the Vietnamese Youth Union. Right, this is in Sabah. By the way, we will be conducting a mission into Sabah. Every year we do that. And it's coming up in July, the first week of July. So if you do have members, students, that you would love to get them to participate in our mission and learn leadership skills, volunteer leadership skills, please, by all means, attend the interviews that's coming up. It'll be in our website, it'll be in our Facebook, and so on. This is what we do together. Locally, we work with community. Whenever I see my students do community projects and it's just us, I will be very upset, and I will be ringing up the local chieftains and so on to insist the local youth participate. So in all our activities, it's always us and the community. Next. This was during the floods. We're very much involved in flood relief. We train our students for flood disaster risk reduction as well. Yeah. And we sent a team to France, parlez-vous français? To Calais. This is a refugee camp. So our alumni, selected alumni, we sent them to feed refugees in the jungle of Calais. It's called the jungle. It has since been bulldozed by the French government. So that is a refugee camp, and they fed about 1,500 meals every day for 3 weeks during the Hari Raya Haji. Right. I mentioned about IAVE, International Association for Volunteer Efforts, as a member. So we went to Mexico, and I was a speaker, and it's part of this international. And our youth, our students, some of them, were sent to attend the youth conference in Puebla. Next. Now, because we monitor to ensure, so we monitor where our resources are, our allocation. So profiling, media, is such an important component for us. We monitor it on a daily basis, the efforts that has been put in. And if you see, we check how many likes we have, which posting, at which date, at which time, the followers that we have, and we do a comparative analysis. We must always do a comparative analysis with all our like-minded non-profits in the country or international. We measure our coverage on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And in case you're wondering, these are all done by our student alumni, by our alumni. We have a team, we call them ACT, A-C-T, Alumni Communications Team. They comprise of students, about 6 to 10 of them, from all over Malaysia, some international, one in UK, and they monitor for us across the country. This is just a snapshot, yeah? They monitor in the social media because students are all into social media. They monitor, for instance, even in Vietnam, internationally as well. This was the recent Green Summer Volunteer Campaign, Mua Hisan. Right. In Vietnam, we monitor the Vietnamese newspapers. We were so fortunate that 3 of our student volunteers were voted best volunteers in Vietnam. One of whom is Zulafka there. Yes. Wave Zulafka, who is from USM. And then Kim and also Das. Yeah. The 3 of them. Right. Next. And we are in Vietnamese news, we're in Laos news, we're in all the news, you know, the areas that we operate in. And of course, our Prime Minister, you know, keeps tabs of what we do, I think. Next. This is just as at 2016, just to monitor our student alumni. So we have, you know, cultivated, if you like, 465. Now it's 571, and the numbers are growing. We're very selective because we have limited resources. We don't just any Tom, Dick, and Harry, so we're very particular about that. So we track each and every one of our alumni. We know where they are, we know what they're doing, we know if they've married, we know if they've got kids, we know where they're working. We keep tabs on them. Big brother's watching you. So, hang on, sorry. Out of 465 at that time in 2016, we also know 63 has won awards after they come back. They win awards as best volunteer student, as best as you know, student leader, and so on and so forth, or whatever. And student leaders, we have 105 at that time. This is only presidents, yeah? We're not talking about the deputy presidents, the exco members. So that's what happens. We don't build them to become political leaders. We build them to become volunteer leaders. But inevitably, they go back and they stand for election and they win. And of course, because of their desire to do good, so it transforms them. You know, we've done 21 missions now, we've done 23, and the numbers go up, yeah? Right, next. So this is basically, we track which college, which university, which institutions that they come from. And as I said, we monitor all of them. Next. Yes. Siti Zuriana is from University Science. She was the tokoh sukarelawan. Yes, it's USM. The pride of University Science. Meaning she won the award as the best volunteer leader or volunteer you know, personality of the year. And Ain is from USIM. And of course, all these finalists are all our alumni. These are, you know, 7 out of 11 finalists were all from YSS. Unfortunately, this year, they changed the rules. The Students' Affairs decided that, no, we can't have too many YSS, so they made the numbers for categories smaller. But, you know, our boys and girls still compete, yeah? So, you know, as you move your bar, you want to make sure that our students are out there to fight for it as well. Right, next. We also keep tabs of the King's Scholars, the wonderful boys and girls, you know, the students who are actually also not only smart, but are also strong in volunteer work, volunteer efforts. So these are snapshots. Wan Hazman, of course, is on our board. Our board members comprise very young. They are all, half of them are in their 20-something, 25, 26, and the other half used to be young. Yeah. And of course, Satish. Satish is a valedictorian, first class, King Scholar from UPSI, University Pendidikan Sultan Idris. And first class now, he's doing his master's. Just a few days ago when we had our annual general meeting, YB Minister, the Honorable Minister, appointed him. All right, okay. Right. So he is now on our board. Yeah, moving on. Yeah, so this is just to show half of what they do. Next. Right, these are all the success stories. Yeah, next. Right, and I will end with this video simply to share with you what we have been doing for the whole of 2016. So, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Dato' Zuraida Atan. So ladies and gentlemen, we would like to call back Dato' Zuraida Atan back into the stage. And also we would like to invite Professor Eileen Tan. And ladies and gentlemen, we would like to give a token of appreciation. So we would like to invite Professor Eileen Tan to give a token of appreciation to Dato' Zuraida Atan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Dato' Zuraida Atan.